You're listening to the Gilbert King Elisa Show.
Okay, we're live. Today is Sunday, July 30th, 2017. We're here on the East Coast of the United States of America. And I just wanted to speak to you guys for a second. And I was supposed to go out tonight, but I decided to stay in. Sometimes, you want to go out, but you also have a lot of things to get done inside, and you enjoy both of them the same way. But today I elected to stay in and just talk to you guys for a little while. Maybe I don't know how long this is going to go. Depends on how long I can get my thoughts out, how fast I can get my thoughts out, or if I want to make it fast at all. And what I wanted to talk to you guys about was just trying to see if my microphone was on. Sometimes I record and the sound is too low, and I wish I can do it again. And that's what I kind of wanted to talk to you about today. I wanted to talk about good information, just in the aspect of where you get it from and where your thoughts should be at. Because I started thinking just from being out. I went on a bike ride for about 16 miles there and back. Just sometimes it's good to go someplace to clear your head and come back and you have a renewed focus, a renewed energy. And the reason I wanted to do this broadcast was because I realized that just in talking to people in this last few weeks, that a lot of people are just removed from good information. And I've been having a lot of individual talks with a lot of people, but I thought that if there was something that I can save online where a lot of people can benefit from something that I had to say, then it would perhaps help people when they needed some kind of assistance, or they were in some kind of a rut and they needed some point of reference. Because I think a lot of times when we're in bad situations or in tricky situations or in difficult situations, we don't immediately know where to go for good information. And a lot of times we feel alone. And when we feel alone, a lot of times we just feel that people are not caring, and this world can be a cold place. That's also part of the reason when I make agreements to meet with someone, I tend to keep them. Because if someone was gracious enough to take their time out to meet with me, then I want to honor that commitment, even if I have other things planned or it's going to be hard for me to make it. I tend to always have a lot of things going on, but if someone is nice enough to take some time out to speak with me or meet me someplace, then I think that they should be, I should at least meet them there. Maybe that's me being too nice, but you never know when you can be the person to help someone out of a difficult situation. And if I can help someone out of a difficult situation, then I don't mind doing that at all. And I think anytime that we are faced with a difficult situation, some of the questions that we ask and we tend to ask is the meaning of life. If there's a purpose to life and the things that you do, does anything you do make a difference? Will it make a difference immediately, or will it make a difference in the future? And life many times is whatever purpose that we give it. But sometimes when we're going through difficulties, something as easily as something that's supposed to be easy as getting out of bed seems to be difficult. And that extra hour of sleep, that extra 5 minutes of sleep or 10 minutes of sleep, when you're really not even tired, becomes 4 hours or becomes 5 hours, and it starts taking up half of the day. And you know that you can easily get up and the sun is out and there are people going through their life, enjoying it, and except that you feel like the best option for you is just to stay inside, and the time that you get up after the day is done. So I'm going to say that this is probably one of the most difficult things to get through, especially in the cold months when it's cold outside and you don't have so much sunlight. It tends to be kind of, the days seem to go very fast, and you start to think about, well, did you get everything done? And you end up going to sleep very late and getting up very late too, especially if you don't have somewhere immediate to go. So it made me think about the importance of giving your life purpose, because for a very long time, you since you're in kindergarten, you're encouraged to go someplace, you're encouraged to be someplace and make something that the government can use for themselves. But after you graduate, there's not a lot of push for someone that has graduated from college to say, well, this is what you're supposed to do now. These are the things you're supposed to do. And this is especially true if you don't have an immediate family, or you don't feel you have a sense of purpose. So you have to give your life meaning. But even if you have a family, you have to give yourself, your life, some kind of meaning, because the well-being of your child is important, but it's not the only thing that is going to sustain your purpose in this life. Again, if you don't know what you're doing here, then it's going to be, your child is going to be looking at you as someone that, not as someone that they can follow their example, but they're going to look at you as someone who perhaps they don't want to be like, or someone who is dragging them down, because many times the child will try to make you happy. And if they don't see you happy around them, then you're going to be dragging them down. And hopefully you won't be the topic of conversation when it comes to a therapist couch somewhere in their adult life. But with that being said, I just want to encourage people to acknowledge their life, because it's easy many times to give someone else advice as to what they should be doing in their life without taking into account that your life is the one that you can impact greatest by making certain decisions. And many times we shy from making these decisions in our lives because they're too difficult, or we say, well, it's easier to tell someone else what to do, but we never reflect on ourselves and tell ourselves, well, these are the things that I need to do in my life to make my life work for me. So some of the hardest questions that we have to ask many times are questions about ourselves, because then once we ask it, we have to answer them. And many of the things that keep us down are things from the past, from months ago, from years ago, from the time that we were kids. And so that memory of you being bullied as a child can reflect on you when you're 45 years old, 50 years old. And you're wondering, well, am I still living that life? Am I still living the same experiences that I did when I was a kid, when I looked for that certain pattern to repeat itself? Or maybe it was when you went to school, you expected a certain group of people to always bully you. Or when you went home, you expected you expected certain people to ignore you. So now as an adult, you're looking in your partners to also see you that same way, or you're looking at certain situations where whatever behavior was directed towards you as a kid is going to repeat itself, without knowing that that's not the case anymore. Life has changed, life has moved on, but you're still living that same experience as you did when you were a child. So those are some of the things that we have to look into when it comes to self-reflection, because many of the times the people that came into our lives, we didn't have a lot of control over it as a child, but as an adult, we're still holding on to the memories of the examples that were given to us. And it's affecting the way that we live our situations. Some of those things involve the spectrum of love and relationships, especially when you expect a certain relationship not to work out because someone who you dedicated a lot of your time, invested a lot of money, and invested a lot of your emotion into is not being reciprocated. So you feel that the next person that you go out with they're going to be the same way. They're going to comport themselves in the same way, when in reality, it's a totally new person, and you may be having old conversations with new people, not knowing that, well, this is not the same person. It might feel the same because they might have started the same way, and it might even end the same way. But will you give them the benefit of the doubt to act differently than the person that just left, or the person that you feel did you some kind of harm? So those are things that you have to decide about your life with a clear head. And that's the importance of having a clear head that is not filled with drugs or legal or illegal, or just a whole bunch of misinformation that has nothing to do with your situation or your life, or bad examples from other people. Because in your situation, it might be a little simpler. It might just be that you are looking for certain patterns to repeat themselves when they're really not repeating themselves. But sometimes when you feel something's going to repeat themselves, you kind of adjust your temperament to meet what you expect, and then what you expected to happen, then it turns out to happen. Whether it's, well, I don't expect to find anybody at my age because I'm too old, or I'm too fat, or I'm too ugly, or I can't move as fast as I used to. But then you realize, well, there are millions of people out there in the world who I can find. And sometimes the area in which you live is not an area where they'll find someone like you attractive. So you might want to consider moving from that area where you are. Or even if you can't afford to move, and you feel that the area where you are is best for your life, or your family, or for your work, then you have to change the places where you go. Because if you go to the same places and you're expecting different results, well, maybe the bar is not the place where you should meet someone like the person you're trying to meet. Maybe it's taking a trip by yourself where you can go out and meet someplace and come back home. Maybe it's the way you look at relationships. Maybe you shouldn't look at relationships as something that's just always fleeting, or something that's forever permanent. Maybe you need to change your aspect, the way you portray your relationship in your head. When it comes to how strongly our brains are, because that same brain that could tell us it's going to be a messed up day at the beginning of the day, by the end of the day can tell you, well, this is going to be the best day ever, just because you heard something that made sense to you, or you heard a song that you haven't heard in a long time. Music is very powerful. Or you have a conversation with someone in a place where you didn't expect to have a conversation, and that changes your whole outlook for the day. And anything could change your trajectory of the day, but it's very easy to even acknowledge it, because many of the times, if we wake up and we hear misinformation, or we hear bad information, our mind already is so powerful that it starts telling you, well, this was bad, so my energy is going to be negative. So when I approach someone else, I'm going to take that negative energy to someone else, and they're going to in turn respond to me in that negative way, and it's going to create a whole bunch of contagious negative energy that is going to spoil the way that people are attracted to you, or the way that people reject you. And sometimes, sometimes you're not upset, but you're not ready to meet people because of the way that you've been trained to accept people as they come. And something as simple as just looking at someone in the face when you approach them could change the way that they react to you. Something as simple as not expecting the worst from somebody when you interact with them can change their outlook. It doesn't mean they have to love you. It doesn't mean they have to like you. No one has to like you, and no one has to love you. But you sell yourself short when you're trying to base your emotion on whether someone else loves you or whether someone else likes you. Now, there are going to be some days that you're not going to want to interact with anyone. And usually because feeling down, I think, is natural. We have chemicals and balances in our body, and sometimes they're up and sometimes they're down. Sometimes it's affected by the weather. Sometimes it's affected by the balances in our lives that are out of balance many times. But the way to get right many times is just by doing something after some sort of short self-evaluation. I think some sort of of depression might be normal. Some kind of stresses might be normal, but usually it shouldn't last for more than a few hours or more than a day if you direct your energy towards the right direction. And again, many of these negative feelings arise from people who we generally care for, who are not responding in a way in which we like, but we fail to realize we can't control the way someone thinks. It could be family members. It can be people that we've liked for a long time. It can be people at our jobs that many times don't respond to us in positive ways. But ultimately, the only person that's going to make yourself feel better is you. But many times, again, I've known people who've been stuck for it for a long time. I myself, when there's certain situations that I know I can't be a part of because of what I know it's going to manifest into. So if I see a party where I know there's going to be a lot of drinking, a lot of smoking, and there's going to be a lot of negative behavior, I try to stay away from those places because it's not going to have a positive effect on me, and it's going to interfere with the way that I like to carry myself. And one of those ways is having a clear head to make decisions. Doesn't mean I'm going to make the right decisions. I would say that I'm pretty balanced when it comes to decision making, but the biggest thing that at times that I have to overcome is just that voice in my head that says, well, you have to not do this. You can't do this. You can't say this. You can't be a part of this because of something that in my mind has held on to from a long time ago. And most of us have these things. I'm not saying all because I don't know everybody, but just the way I see people interact, we all have these things that tell us no. And it's not an enemy from the outside telling us no. It's something inside that's invisible and we can't see that's telling us, well, you're not supposed to do this and you can't do this. And many of the times that's the repeating voice in your head, especially when things are happening that don't necessarily make sense. So when I interact with people, I assume that they have these things also going on inside of them and try to pull things out of them that they already know for themselves. But many times they squash because, believe it or not, many of us don't have people close to us that are encouraging us to do good. We have people inside of us that see good a lot of times in other people, but they don't see it in us, or they don't. And ultimately, I think everyone, even if you're a prisoner, even if you're a hardened criminal, even if you're someone who's been doing bad for years and years and years, I think everyone has something inside of them that wants to be seen, not in a negative light, but in a positive light. And even if you're the person that everyone hates, there's something inside of everyone that knows that when you see them, that they want to be looked at in a positive way. It doesn't matter how hard you think you are. It doesn't matter how removed from society you think you are. It doesn't matter how real you think you are. It's something that's going to affect you when you think that you don't, when it's not affecting you. And this is especially if, again, if you haven't had a lot of experience spending time by yourself. Luckily, I've had a lot of experience spending time by myself just from growing up. I remember me being on my own for a very long time. But that's something that even when you have a lot of experience, there are going to be moments that you're going to realize, well, or go places where I'm like, well, I'm at this place by myself, but I wish I had some friends around me that I can rely on, just like this group of friends around me, around that group. I wish that I knew enough people that I can rely on or be loyal, that can understand where I'm coming from. And I wish that I can, I can be in this circle without these thoughts arising. And I see a lot of people going through the same thing. But when it happens in my situation, sometimes it's hard to be in that situation. Many times what I do is avoid those situations. And I think that that's why therapists make a lot of money, because people are actually paying them hundreds of dollars an hour in some cases for people just to do something that was done automatically before, when they way back in the day, which was they're paying someone to listen to them. They're paying someone to listen while they talk. But it's almost crazy that, I mean, it's not crazy that they're getting help, but you're paying someone to listen to your problems, to your dilemmas. You're paying someone to be there for you, or to help you see things in a way that perhaps you haven't considered. And these are tools that they don't give you in school, and a lot of times you have to figure these things out in yourself. So, for example, let's say you're a single mother and you have 3 children, and you have 3 different fathers for each one of these children. And the first thing you have to do is realize, well, this is not an ideal situation. Can things get better? Yes, they can. But the first thing you have to do when you have a vein or any artery that's bleeding, you have to stop the bleeding. And sometimes the people that you're surrounded by in these situations are people that don't know how to stop that bleeding, or they'll talk to you in a way that's not reaching you, or you're surrounded by people who just want to take more from you than actually patch whatever hole that you have inside of you. No pun intended. But these are people that many times are looking to leech off of you, or they see something that's broken. And just like many doctors, they're not going to fix something that's broken inside of you, but they're going to give you something that's going to make you rely on them year after year after year after year, while you keep paying for just supporting the ailment, but not actually curing it. So what I'm saying is, if you're a person in that situation, you have to realize, well, I made a lot of bad decisions up until this point, but the best thing that I can do is change not only my life, but the life of the people that are depending on me. And that means talking to those children about the decisions that you made without repercussions, about how they may see you when they get older, how they may look at you of your actions or your decisions, and how it affected your life. It doesn't mean that you're going to pose like you're perfect. Perfection never helped anyone. And talking bad about everyone and how it wasn't your fault, it's not something that's going to help anyone. But some of the things that you might want to do in those situations is actually keep some kind of organized tally of how your children are doing. Ask them how they're doing. Follow up on how they're doing. Acknowledge that you can't do some of the same things that you did before. You have to change your actions, because when you don't acknowledge that something is broken, it's just going to keep hurting more. It's going to get a point where you can't sustain it anymore. It's like that faucet that started with a leak, and it keeps dripping and dripping and dripping and dripping, and then all of a sudden you realize there's a flood because that little leak, when you weren't home, it started to explode. And that could be that could either be literal, or it can be just your child coming home with hanging out with the wrong friends and coming under a lot of trouble. It can be your daughter getting into trouble the same way you did when you were younger, dealing with different men, dealing with different ladies that are not looking out for their best interest. And don't assume that other people are going to talk to your child if you don't talk to your child. So if you're leaving it up to the school to talk to your child, then you're out of the game already. You already threw in the towel. You're already lost, because you left your responsibility on the hands of someone else. Just to go off on a tangent for a moment, I've seen a lot of videos where there are many single parents who are allowing their daughters to, even when they're 6 or 7, to twerk and do all these adult dances and to do all these over-sexualized dances at a young age, and in a stadium full of people, in a stadium where there are people watching and they're surrounded by other girls also doing the same thing. That probably has to stop if you care for your child. And it shouldn't be something that someone else has to tell you. Well, the over-sexualization of a child is something that you probably wouldn't want in your home. Why do it in a stadium, even if it's for a community group? I don't know what kind of community is going to condone children dancing in such a way and saying it's okay. But that's when you're filled with good information. That's usually when you don't expect more from your child than what everyone else expects from your child. It doesn't matter what anyone else is doing around you. You have to really look at your child and say, this, I don't expect this from you. I don't want this from you. So this is not what we do under my roof. This is not what we do in this house. So when you expect excellent behavior, then you should deserve nothing less than excellent children. With that being said, there's a lot of information going on about what it means to be a single parent. And it's not an ideal situation, but you can make it work. But there's certain things that you can't say, that you don't need the other parent, because you always can use another parent, but not just a man for the sake of having a man in the house, just someone who has a level head, someone who's responsible, and someone who's not going to be abusive of the kid that you have at home, whether it's a boy or a girl, because many boys also experience abuse. So let's get back on the topic for a second. Good information is something that you have to look for. And it's really just looking for ways to solve your problems. And most of those things, most of the keys are already in you. Most of those things you don't have to buy. You don't have to go anywhere outside of yourself to try to find it. At the moment you have to go outside of yourself and try to find it, then you're putting a price on it. And the price is usually someone who's trying to capitalize off of your need for help. And I'm not saying, well, someone else, don't go to some place to get help. But I'm saying most of the tools that you already need to get better in your life are already inside of you. Sometimes the hardest thing to do when you know you have to do something is to start. And that's why sometimes when you battle with certain bouts of depression, the hardest thing to do is just get up. And you start thinking about things in the past. You start thinking about your situation. And you start comparing yourself to other people, and you start looking around to see, well, this person has more than me. Is it going to take forever to me to get the kind of body I want? It's going to take forever for me to start eating healthy. It's going to take forever to me to go ahead and travel. It's going to take forever to me to save up and buy a house. It's going to take forever to me to start investing in my children's college education. It's going to take forever to me. I'm too old. I'm too slow. I'm too skinny. I'm too fat. I'm not smart enough. I wasn't good in school. I didn't get to finish school. So for everything that you wish to do, there's going to be an excuse. I'm too black. I'm too Jewish. I'm too Spanish. I'm too Asian. There's always going to be an excuse. And as much excuses are you using, you may be using, you look around and you see there's someone already doing what you want to be doing. There's someone doing what you want to be doing with a lot less, with a lot poorer, in a lot poorer situation, lack of finances, with more obstacles. And then your mind does two things. Well, either I can do it too, it's going to motivate me to do it, or it's going to start making more excuses. It's going to start saying, well, they only did it because they had this. Well, if I was like that, if I was taller, I can do it. Oh, he only has, if I had two parents at home when I was growing up, I could do it. Oh, if my mother would have said this, I could have done it. If my father would have been like this, I could have done it. And it all undermines and takes away from your own power. So you have to be careful of those things that take away from your power, because then you're going to find people who are going to promise you getting some kind of power. And it's usually through some sort of usury and trying to get whatever asset that they see in you that you don't see in yourself. And so that's something that I would say that that's a good reason for you to take control of the power that you have, but other people want to exploit in you. And in that, I want to say that there are many things that you can do to reclaim your energy, and that's start. Even if you do something badly in the beginning, in 8 months to a year, you do it again, it won't be the same way. Notice you start picking up the guitar, you start playing the guitar, you might learn a few chords, and it might not make sense to you. Your fingers might not hold in a certain position. You might be taking a voice class and you can't hit that note, or your voice might be a certain way that it's not registering with you, or it doesn't sound good when you record it and you play it back to yourself. You don't like the sound of your own voice. But when you hear it a few months later, even a few weeks later, you realize now this is making sense to you. The space between what you're learning now and by the time it registers in your brain sometimes takes a little while. And that's why you shouldn't judge people too harshly, because some of the things that you're hearing, especially when they're new, it's going to be a change. And we all know that the body, the mind doesn't react well to change. It's something natural. Look at what happened to the dinosaurs. Look at what happens to the polar caps. When something changes, it seems to not make sense at first. Or sometimes if you don't get extinct, then something new develops from it. But those are the two possibilities that can happen. But what I'm saying is, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be hard. And many of the people that you talk to are going to feel you. You ever notice that you're sitting with someone and you're having a conversation with someone, but you're really not talking about anything that pertains to you, and your mind starts to wander? Because as well as, your body needs to eat, but your mind needs to be fed also. And most of the information that we're getting nowadays is not feeding our mind. It's just feeding everything that's on the outside, the way that we look, the way we present ourselves, our online presence, the branding. Everything's a brand, and you don't even know why they're selling it, or why you even need it. Let's check and see if this thing is still on. But when we focus too much on the outside, then we neglect the things that we need to develop our own thoughts, our own patterns of thinking that can get us to the next level. And again, like I said, most of the things that you already have and you need, the tools that you have, are already in you. Now, two things can happen once you know that. You could say, I'm going to wait till tomorrow, or I'm going to start right now. You could say, I'm going to wait till tomorrow, and hopefully I have the same energy again, or I can start right now. And starting right now seems to be the hardest part, because there was a study that was done, and it said that once someone hears good information and once it registers, it just lasts about 24 to 48 hours or less, but when you hear negative information, you can hold on to that forever, which means that our brain holds on to negative information better than it does positive information. So think about that for a second. When you look at the news, think about for a second when you look at the movies. Think about that for a second when you hear the songs that you hear, and you wonder, how come there are not more songs that hold on to good information or discuss good information? Because why would someone sell something to you that's not going to last? So when you have something inside of you that whether it's like, no one would sell. There's a reason they don't stop cigarettes from, they know that it's bad for people, but they still sell cigarettes. And when you sell cigarettes, the one thing that the government knows is that you become addicted to it, you're going to bring in tax dollars. You're going to bring in revenue towards the government. So the same place where you're living is making a lot of dollars out of your sickness. So even when you talk about the soda tax, the sugar tax, well, they put a tax on sugar, but how's that helping people from not buying it? It's just going to make it more expensive. It's not going to stop people from buying it. So again, once you raise money, once you get money involved in things that you already know, the person drinking the sugar, they know they shouldn't be drinking it, even if it's a 32-ounce cup from 7-Eleven. They know they're not supposed to be drinking it, but when you leave it to other people to think for you, they're going to put a price on you, and the price could be your life. When you let other people think for you, you're just telling the government, well, I know I shouldn't be drinking this because it's bad for me, but I'm going to drink it anyway. Well, have them explain, how is this helping your health in any way? That's going to be hard for them to explain. But if you ask them to explain how this is helping our finances, they can explain that rather easily, because soda's been in the market for years now, and they know that's something that they can raise the price to whatever they want. They're still going to charge for it. People are still going to buy it. So something that sells itself, you really don't need a commercial for it. Something that sells itself, you don't need a commercial for it. You ever seen the car Lamborghini? They don't have commercials like that because they know you're going to want it because of the perceived status it gives you. If something has some perceived status, then they don't really have to advertise. You're going to buy it anyway. Now, a car like Kia, which doesn't have the same perceived status, during the NBA season or the football season, you're going to see commercials for it every 50 minutes, every commercial cycle, every time out, you're going to see commercials for a Kia. So what I'm saying is, you have to keep your eyes open. You have to realize that most of the things that are given to you for free are things that you don't need. And a lot of this is information. So let's consider that when it comes to the public school system. If you're going to a public school, you're receiving it for free, but no one asks the question, what is the purpose of a public school? If you could actually go through a public school and make a great living by the time you graduate, then it probably wouldn't be free. It probably wouldn't be free, because if everyone can make a great living off of the public school system, then it probably wouldn't be free. Why would the people that are having these great corporations want you as competition? Why would the people who are making a living, supporting their kids, supporting their families, supporting the wealth of their generations, want you to make a decent living? So it's important for kids to go to school, but education is something that starts at home, and it's something that should complement the regular education that they get in a public school. Public school is just the start. So again, if you're leaving it up to teachers to teach you something that you should already be getting somewhere else, then you can't blame the teachers, because they're also handcuffed by the same system that you say is not helping you. With that being said, you have to look to be educated, because education is not free. Now it's more free than when we were growing up, because back then, getting this information, you would have to go on America Online. And before America Online, there was Encyclopedia Britannica, and most people couldn't afford that. And if you did, the information many times that was given to you in this great set of a 32-volume encyclopedia set that would they would deliver to your house, many times the information would be outdated in a couple of years. So if they're talking about a war that just happened, in a couple of months, they would have to change the stats, and they would always offer upgrades, and they would have to send this big, great book to your house, and they would charge you money that way. So now we are in the age of information. There's really no excuse for being kept from it, for saying that you don't know certain things, except that you tuned into the same places, except that you've been conditioned to know more about your local celebrities, except how a mortgage works, except what the home values, the property values, and property taxes are in your area, what you do to build credit. These are things that you should always know. We're living in an age that's being dominated by technology. How many people know how to use it? How many people know how to harness that power to complement their lives? They say that most people with a social media account, they use it for purposes of just making a personal page. So someone else is making money off of what you don't know. And that's what education is in the 21st century. Someone else is making money off of you don't know. So your ignorance is funding the same people that you're saying are hurting your pockets. And it's information that you're giving people willingly about your life, about the way that you run your life, where you go, where you visit, what you ate. Information that before people would have to buy through focus groups. Information that people would have to, they will send telemarketers call you. They will have them call you on the phone to get this information. So good information is something that's around us, but we have to be able to harness it. Even if you are in a position, even the people who have the most money in our society, many times they're removed from good information because they have to keep up an appearance of having a certain amount of status. And you become a slave to being, to your royalty rating, to your perceived royalty rating. And that's no way to live, especially as, I think it was the year 2000 and with the housing market crashed and the stock market crashed a number of years ago. I think it was 2008. A lot of people were living under the appearance of being wealthy. A lot of people were living under the appearance of having it made. A lot of people were living under the appearance of having it all together. But when they had to sell their homes, they had to downgrade, and they had to, there was a dent in their lifestyle that wasn't there before. It showed that the way that they were living was in a way that really wasn't conducive to the amount of money that they were making. And a lot of credit card companies were, people came down on the credit card companies for giving people these predatory loans to own a house and to buy things that luxury items. But again, living within your means is something that feels good. What doesn't feel good is knowing that you owe money for a car or a big expensive house and not having a way to pay for it. And when you're able to not worry too much about what other people think, that should make you happy. When you're able to worry less about how other people see you because you're not hurting anyone else, that should make you happy. Even if it doesn't make you happy, you should be in a place where it says, well, I'm not hurting anyone. No one is being hurt by what I'm doing. Everyone receives the same 24 hours in a day, and this is what I choose to do with my hours. Now, I'm not saying if you're trying to deliberately hurt someone, because then you are working against yourself. I'm not saying if you're trying to steal from someone else deliberately, because then you're just hurting yourself. But most of the time, the people who are trying to do us harm are people that a lot of times they need help, but they're not going to go and get help. They're not going to get help because of what they think help is. Many people believe that getting help is a weakness. And weakness is not something that's valued. It's always, and that's why a lot of people will buy that big expensive car and that big expensive house. Because if you don't have this, you're considered to be weak. If you don't fight that guy who's in your face, you're considered weak. If you don't, so it becomes the objective of many people to not be seen as weak, when being weak is perhaps one of the best things that can work for you. We're living in a time where being strong and proud is supposed to be a blessing, but there's nothing better than appearing vulnerable in the eyes of someone who is trying to be strong instead of just being strong. You get more from showing your vulnerabilities. When I talk, every time that I talk, I'm talking about myself. It might seem that I'm talking about you. It might seem that I'm talking about the situation that I know nothing about, but I'm talking to myself. I'm reflecting on myself. And the things that I can see in other people when I talk to them is myself. I never talk to someone without seeing myself first. And I don't, if I want to make an excuse for you, that means I see you that you're less than I am. If I see you as someone who is less than I am, I'm going to say, well, you couldn't do this because you were black. You couldn't do this because you didn't have a father. You couldn't do this because you didn't receive enough love as a kid. You didn't do this because your mate didn't love you. Your partner didn't love you. You didn't do this because it's all someone else's fault. So once you start taking personal responsibility for your actions and the results, then you can become closer to that leader, not for other people, but this leader in your life. And the things that you can accomplish are things that you can accomplish. No one knows where you can get to. No one knows where you can get to, the things that you can have in 1 year, let alone by the end of the week. So that's the kind of thing that if you feel someone else is the cause of your misfortune, I recommend that you write down the things that are important to you. I recommend that you write down the things that you have already that are considered resources, and you begin with those things without saying, I need this. I need a better camera. I need a better I need a better job. I need a better situation. I need a good woman in my life. I need I need a better table in which to write in. I need a better iPhone. I need a better sound system. You already have these. You already have the things that you need inside of them. Anything else that you can get later. Most of the things you have, and the great thing about it is all the things that you need already you've got for free. Whether you believe in God, whether you don't believe in God, most of the things that you already have, you've gotten for free from the time that you were born. And those are things that you have for you. Those abilities will change over time. They can get better, they can get worse. But all the things that you have to progress are already inside of you. And anyone who is saying that you can't do it because of this circumstance, you can't do it because of that, just think to yourself of everything that had to happen for you to be where you are, everything that had to happen for you to be in your position, everybody who had to sacrifice themselves for you to be in that position, whether it was family members, whether it was ancestors, whether it was changing their mind about a situation, finally deciding to let go of the past, finally deciding to take control of their current situation, their present situation, and just people deciding to start. Sometimes it just takes all your energy to decide to start. And a big indicator of what you can do with big things is how well you handle small things. And I'm talking about small things. I'm talking about some people want to lead. They want to be a leader of a lot of people, but they can't start off with something as simple as making their bed. I'm talking about something as simple as making their bed, or every day they pass a certain pencil in their office, and instead of picking it up, they'll jump over it, they'll kick it to the side, or they'll ask whose pencil this is. And the first revolution that ever started, it's going to be the first revolution, and the best revolution you can ever have is your revolution over yourself and your mind and your actions. The best revolution you're ever going to have is over yourself, your mind, or your actions. If you think you're going to just get up one day and put your arms up and start saying, people, hey, do what I do because I'm doing it, it's not going to happen. It's going to be through your action, and you might not even get to see how someone else is influenced. Someone is looking at what you do. Someone is looking at you being disciplined. Someone is, and it's usually younger people, but you also have the power to motivate older people just by you being motivated yourself. Sometimes the best thing you can do to somebody is acknowledge their presence, to look at them, to shake their hand, look them in the eye, all things that don't cost any money. And when other people see that you're motivated about something, it can encourage them. I'm not saying to take them with you. I'm not saying that because a lot of times their path is not your path. I'm not saying to include them in everything. Don't wait for a group of people to decide to revolutionize themselves for you to do something. But because your thoughts are your own. When you decide to do something, you're going to decide this is the time. It could be at 4 a.m. Sometimes don't you wake up in the morning and you decide that, well, I don't feel sleepy anymore. I'm just getting up at this time and I feel like getting up, and you don't know where this energy is coming from. I'm telling you, you know where the energy is coming from. But you can decide to go back to sleep, or you can decide to stay up. You can decide, well, I'm just going to go to sleep and not worry about it. Well, I don't have a gym membership, so I can't do sit-ups. You can get a blanket, throw it on the floor, put it right next to your bed. And as long as you're not waking up your partner, you should be all right. Just start doing some sit-ups. Don't grunt too hard. I'm sure they have to get up. But other people are seeing you motivated. And once you see other people see you motivated, they can do either two things. They can either join in, or they can laugh. And get used to people laughing, because people might not understand what you're doing, especially if they haven't seen it, you haven't done it before. I mean, it's not their fault many times. They're not used to it. They're just not used to seeing you motivated. So when you decide to motivate, it's not about what other people are going to do or how other people are going to react. It's about what you're going to do. And, I've seen many parents with children, they say, well, I don't know, I want more for my kids, and my kids deserve more, without thinking the best thing that you can do for your child sometimes is just spend time with them. They might not know how much you spent for something, or they might not know exactly what it took for you to go someplace, but they'll know that the time that was spent with you, and the smile on your face, and the conversation that you had with them on that trip, what you did, the road that you took, to the point where when they're by themselves, they're going to remember, oh, this is the road we went down. This is how we got there. I remember me and my dad, we did this. I remember me and my mom, we did this. But, again, and that's just part of whatever you need is already inside of you. If someone's trying to tell you it's outside of you, or someone's convincing you to pay them a lot of money for you to figure out something about yourself, you can do that. Sometimes it helps, because sometimes you get in your own way. Sometimes you have been in a position for too long that you don't know how to break that pattern. That's why, a team has a coach. That's why a team has a coach in front of them, or else there'll be a whole bunch of players deciding, well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. I'm going to score every touchdown, and you're not. And I'm going to shoot, and you're not. And so that's why there's a coach, and there's an assistant coach, and there's a special teams coach, and there's whatever kind of coach. Because people need some kind of order. They need some kind of discipline that works in their life. And with that discipline comes focus. All right. So many times the things that we focus on are things that we think that other people appreciate about us. And, it never concerned me too much of how somebody dresses, how somebody looks, or how cool someone is to be perceived, because I like to listen to what they say. And once I listen to what someone says, they pretty much tell me everything they need to about them. And that's the way that you should look at people when you're talking to them. Not what they're saying that they are, but listen to who they say that they are. And then see what they are, and see what they do, see how they act. So if someone says, I'm going to call you at 3 p.m. in the afternoon, see if they call you at 3 p.m. in the afternoon. If someone says, I'm going to call you when I get home, and I get home at 5, if it's past 5:30 and they haven't called you, then you have to see how they act, especially if they say, I'm someone who's responsible and reliable. And from that, you're able to build, some kind of relationship, some kind of understanding as to who this person is and how they can fit into your life. And another misconception that people have is where they start is exactly where they're going to finish. One of the interesting things that I found out about this week was about Ben Franklin. I was reading up on the history of Ben Franklin, who didn't go very far in his formal education, but was one of the men that's considered one of the most intelligent people in the United States because of his many interests and inventions in his time. And he didn't have a formal education. And the value that we put on formal education is something that really limits a lot of our behavior and something that limits a lot of our thinking. And the people that we see as smart and people we see as geniuses are people who have a lot of papers on the wall, a lot of degrees from different places. Now, I'm not saying that doesn't have their place. That takes discipline, and it takes a lot of learned information. But I'm saying there's more than one sort of genius. Sometimes people's genius is speaking. Sometimes people's genius is playing an instrument. Sometimes people's genius is the way that they're able to analyze situations with little information. Sometimes people's genius is being able to make money in a place where there's no money. So when you talk about genius, you have to discover what makes you good at what you do, and that can make you get you closer to what your genius is. But what I'm saying, if you've been in a public school since the time that you were in kindergarten, much of that genius has already been taken out of you. And for you to rediscover it, you're going to have to put a lot of effort into trying to get that out of you. Even, some of the kids are very creative when I see them playing with their toys, or I see them drawing, and I see them, the careful attention when it takes for them to write a story, and they have to use their imagination. And then they turn into a certain age, and the things that used to come to them naturally now starts becoming a problem. Now starts becoming a hindrance. It starts becoming too much. They start worrying too much about the opposite sex. They start worrying too much about their looks. They start worrying too much about the external. And guess what? The external is always going to be there. The external is always going to be there. But the value you put on it is something that's going to be your own. When you're 60 years old, you're still going to be attracted to a woman that's 20 years old. Because when you were 20, you are attracted to a woman that's 20 years old. Now, whether she will respond to you in a certain way, in the same way, probably not. But that's why you have to start getting used to being in tune with what's on the inside, because you are constantly changing, even if you don't want to. You can be that rapper who at 50 years old is still trying to dress like he's a young kid with the baggy clothes and the look like he doesn't care that much about anything. But how he's perceived, he's still focusing on the external. So, or you see that person in the club still trying to pull the same kind of games that a younger woman would, not realizing time has passed by, and you're still in the same spot trying to play the same games that younger women are playing, when you could possibly be mentoring them and telling them what's out there. So, but many people just do things because they see other people doing it without giving it any thought as to why they like it, why they do those things. I put a post up earlier this week about young men sagging, and another boy with a diploma saying, "How about we have more of these and less of these?" Well, I mean, it was a funny ad. The only thing I didn't like about the ad was that it meant for someone to, what I got from it was, along with the message, was that for someone to be considered someone of value, they needed a college degree in their hand and a diploma, but that was, when I looked at the ad, it showed me that there were two people, but the one on the right seemed to be removed from the information that the one on the left had. There were two men of color, but the one on the left seemed to have been guided in a certain direction, and the other one seemed to be guided in the other direction. The ad that you won't ever see is that why the one on the right probably comes from a broken kind of family, and why, the causes behind this, because that would be a little bit more controversial than sagging. And but sagging is a clear indicator that there's some kind of family breakage. There's something that's broken within that family, that it's okay for someone to walk out of this household like this. It's okay for someone to represent this household like this. It's the same way as when you leave a school and the first thing that you hear kids do when they get outside of school, you see them threatening one another, or they start fighting, or they start cursing at one another. You wonder, what did they receive in school that enabled them to come out here and represent the school in this fashion? Because especially if you're in high school and or even elementary school, middle school, you're leaving a place of learning, and this is the way that you're being represented. You're representing the school. Then, what did you really learn in this place? So, that's the kind of thing that makes you wonder what goes into school. And again, when we talk about schools and public schools and things like that, what is the purpose of a public school? Because the same behavior that you see in many of these places are the same behaviors that you'll see in a cell block in a prison. So, and that's the importance of being in tune with good information, the right information. Many times on television, a lot of the shows that you'll see, especially on Sunday night, right at the start of the week, will be how people disagree and fight. If you look at most of the news shows, whether it's a news show, whether it's a reality TV show, the theme seems to be, this is how these people are going to disagree, and this is how these people are going to fight. And whoever the loudest and whoever has the most destructive way about them is going to be the winner. And that's the way that we're taught to settle situations. You even see it on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You'll put up a post and someone disagrees with the post. Instead of changing the channel, what they'll do is decide to show their displeasure just by commenting. When they have your phone number, they have your text, and there are other ways that they can get in contact with you, especially if they know you personally. But again, the way that we're taught to deal with situations is in the most brash and the most rude way that you can. It's something that, again, if we're supposed to be the nation that has the most geniuses, there's something that we're supposed to produce just from our learning institutions that warrants that title, not just the title of genius. So, good information is out there. Many times you're just removed from it. I'm not going to say you can do whatever you want, because I don't know if you're capable of doing it. I think you can, but I'm not going to say you are, because I don't want to lie to you. I think that you're capable of doing anything that you start and stay with for a long time, and it's going to take small steps. If we're in the habit of instant gratification, then many of the things that we want to achieve are not going to happen, because we're going to discourage ourselves. So a lot of the times when we think of an idea, we have an end goal, but we don't see the process. So if you want to travel to, you have in your mind, you want to go to Hawaii, you want to go to Israel, you want to go to Russia, you want to go to any of these places, you want to see the continent of Africa, you see yourself already there, but you don't see the process that it takes to get there. You don't see the discipline that it takes to get there. You don't see that, okay, well, now I have to get a passport if you don't already have one. Now I have to get a visa if the country requires a visa. Now I have to save up this amount of money, not only for me to be able to pay rent, but now I have to save this amount of money for me to be able to stay in a nice place when I'm there, or even just a regular place. I have to save this amount of money for me to eat, and then I have to save this other amount of money for emergencies. So this falls under the category of strategy. And the thing is, many of our problems arise from money and the lack of it. And when you're able to see where your money is going, where your money can get you, then that trip from start to finish starts becoming a lot longer. But if you're able to see, right, well, this is what I want to do, this is what I intend to do, and I can see it happening because I'm making changes, small changes in my life, not looking for immediate gratification, and I'm buying the things that can get me there soonest, then it starts becoming becoming something that you can see. It's something that's possible. It's something that's possible in your life. It's something that you can see. But without seeing that purpose, without you having that sense of purpose, then it's going to be hard for you. Like, for example, when I went to India for the first time, the first thing that I thought was, well, I have this idea that I don't know what I'm going to be doing in India, but when I go, I'd like to be able to work with people that need help. And I don't know what kind of help they need over there, but I'd like to be in a situation where people can use my help in some way. And when I went to Africa, when I went to Kenya, it was the same thing. I said, I know I want to see animals. I know I want to see the safari, but I want to be able to help people that are in a certain situation that I haven't seen where I'm from. And I want to experience that so that I can talk about it and make it part of my experience and see things where I'm from in the proper perspective. And that's the thing that you want to be a little closer to, perspective. Because sometimes when you see something, when you think about something, it's not in perspective to who you are or who you're becoming or who you want to be. Perspective is always changing depending on how you look at something. Okay, perspective is always changing depending on how you look at something. You can be looking at something the same way for years and years and years, or voting the same way for years and years and years without realizing this is not making sense anymore. And then you realize, well, it's not that, the only reason it's not making sense is because I'm changing as a person. And when you feel yourself changing as a person, don't always resist it. Give it a chance. Give it a chance to turn into something that perhaps you didn't consider before. When you feel yourself changing as a person, see that, notice that everything exactly is not going to happen how you thought it was going to happen, but it's still happening in some way. Go to places that you haven't been before, experience things that you haven't been before. Stay curious. Don't kill the child inside of you. Everything is not that serious. Some things might sound serious just because you're growing up, but everything is not as serious as you put it. Some things are, but most of the things that you can change, it's not going to be up to you to change. And keep your agreements if you make an agreement, because it helps you grow as a person. Usually when people don't keep their agreements, it's because their life is in some kind of disarray, and or something is happening, or they have some kind of clutter that needs to be resolved. And don't allow yourself to be fooled by things that a lot of times don't make sense, because usually when they don't make sense, it's because they're not sensical things, or they're nonsensical things. Most of the people that claim they know you are people that know you the least, and are the people who don't ask you a lot of questions, or people who are not really trying to get to know you. So it's up to you. What I'm saying is, if you're one of those people, be the person that tries to get to know someone else. It's not hard to get to know someone. Ask basic questions. Anytime you feel like there's a lull in a conversation, use that opportunity. Don't just be talking for no reason just because you're bored, but use time to get to know someone. Use time to get to know yourself, and use time to understand the situation. And the best way to get to know what situation you're dealing with is, don't decide quickly. Just because something is happening doesn't mean you need an answer right away. Don't wait forever either, but give yourself some time, think about it, process it, and perfect your processing system. Even if you don't perfect it, make a good enough decision, and then at least you know how it's like to make a decision under that situation. So if you're working with 12 people and you have to make a quick decision, okay, next time you might be responsible for 30 people, but you have more experience than you did before you started. Write things down, keep a schedule. Don't feel that you belong to anything just because of what someone else expects of you. Don't be a slave to ideology. Because then you're going to be standing up for things that many times don't agree with who you are, who you're becoming. And keep learning.
This has been a Gilbert King Elisa production.